Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. Today, we're diving into Leviticus, chapters 10 through 12, to be exact.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, this section is a wild ride. We're talking priestly mishaps, divinely approved dinners, and rituals that might leave you scratching your head.
It's true, these chapters can seem a bit all over the place at first glance, but when you really dig in, you start to see how they all connect to this central theme, the idea of holiness permeating every single aspect of life, from the most sacred rituals to the food you eat.
And you know I love uncovering those connections. So let's get right into it with Leviticus chapter 10. This is where we meet Aaron. He's the high priest, the one leading the Israelites in worship.
Right, and just to refresh everyone's memory, Aaron's the brother of Moses.
Okay, got it. So Aaron and his sons, Nadab and Abihu.
This is where things take a dark turn. Picture this. The Israelites have just finished building the tabernacle. It's this portable sanctuary, specifically designed to house the presence of God. It's a sacred space, meticulously constructed according to super specific divine instructions.
It's a big deal.
Huge. And Aaron and his sons, they've been consecrated as priests. Their job is to maintain all the rituals that connect the people to the divine.
Talk about responsibility.
Absolutely. So Nadab and Abihu, they decide to offer incense to God.
Seems pretty standard so far.
You'd think so, right? But here's the catch. They offer what the text calls strange fire.
Strange fire.
Ah.
Okay, what makes it strange?
That's the million-dollar question. We can't say for sure. Maybe it was the wrong kind of incense, or maybe they lit it wrong. Who knows? But whatever the reason, this seemingly small act has some pretty big consequences.
And by big, you mean?
Fire shoots out from the presence of God and consumes them. Just like that.
It's gone.
Just like that.
I mean, talk about a powerful image. It really drives home this point about the power of the divine and how important it is to approach the sacred with, extreme reverence and care.
Absolutely. And that idea of reverence, that's huge throughout Leviticus. But here's the part that always gets me. Even Aaron, the high priest, and all this unimaginable loss, he's forbidden from mourning publicly.
Can't even grieve openly.
Nope. And that says a lot about the fear of divine anger in this ancient society. Any outward display of grief, even from the high priest himself, could be seen as questioning God's actions.
Wow. Just imagine living with that kind of pressure.
It's intense.
It really makes that line from verse 3 hit differently, By those who come near me, I will be treated as holy. It's a stark reminder that holiness, at least in this context, meant total, unwavering obedience, even when facing unimaginable tragedy. So we've gone from strange fire and incense to mourning restrictions. It really highlights just how central this whole idea of holiness and divine law was in their lives. And speaking of rules, Leviticus doesn't stop at rituals and mourning. It gets pretty specific about their diets, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Chapter 11, right? It's like a whole rundown of the do's and don'ts of the ancient Israelite dinner plate.
It outlines which animals are considered clean, okay to eat, and which ones are, off limits. And these dietary laws, they had a huge impact shaping Jewish dietary traditions even to this day.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see that kind of continuity. But I have to admit, looking back, it's less about the what and more about the why that gets me thinking.
The why is always the most interesting part, isn't it?
It is. So hit me with it. What's the bigger picture behind all these food rules?
Well, for one thing, it wasn't as simple as just tasty versus disgusting. There's a whole system of thought behind it. There's a reason why camels were off the menu while locusts got the green light.
So it wasn't just about hygiene, although I imagine that played a role, especially back then.
You're right. Hygiene probably factored in. Pigs, for example, they were known to carry diseases, especially in that climate. So naturally, they were considered unclean. But it goes way beyond just hygiene. These distinctions, they were woven into the very fabric of their social and spiritual lives.
Like that graded holiness idea we talked about earlier.
Exactly. It wasn't just about the tabernacle itself. It extended to their kitchens, their dinner tables, the food they ate or didn't eat. It directly affected their state of ritual purity, their relationship with God, even their interactions with each other.
Wow. It's like every meal was a mini ritual in itself.
Precisely. And the text doesn't stop at just what they could or couldn't eat. It goes a step further, outlining the repercussions of even coming into contact with a dead animal.
Wait, so if you accidentally brushed up against, a dead gecko, you were ritually impure?
You got it. Though the severity and how long the impurity lasted, that depended on the animal.
Okay, now that is very specific. But it makes you realize that these rules, as strange as they might seem to us now, they weren't arbitrary at all. They were deeply connected to their beliefs, their social structures, their whole understanding of the world around them. It's like a puzzle. And each rule gives us another little glimpse into how this ancient society actually functioned. Speaking of glimpses into their society, let's move on to childbirth. From forbidden foods to, well, baby showers. Okay, maybe not a party exactly, but Leviticus chapter 12 tackles those rituals surrounding childbirth and purification after a baby's born. And it doesn't waste any time getting into specifics.
It really doesn't. This chapter gives us a fascinating look at how ancient Israelites viewed childbirth. It wasn't just a physical event, it was a deeply spiritual one too, all tied up with these ideas of purity and ritual observance.
And one thing that really stands out is this difference in the purification period for mothers of boys versus girls.
Oh, absolutely. Tell me about that.
Well, mothers of newborn boys, they were considered ritually impure for 7 days. And then after that, there was an additional 33 days of purification.
Okay.
But for mothers of girls, it was 14 days of initial impurity, followed by a longer period of 66 days.
Wow. So double the time for girls. Why such a big difference?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Scholars have been debating that one for centuries. Some theories link it to ancient beliefs about like bodily fluids and how impure they were thought to be.
Interesting.
Others point to the social structures of the time. Maybe sons were valued differently than daughters, and that influenced the rituals surrounding their births. It makes you think, right? These might seem like really strict rules, but they were often rooted in this whole web of beliefs, social norms, and interpretations. It wasn't just blind obedience. It was about navigating these really deep-seated beliefs in their everyday lives.
Absolutely. And it's so important for us to approach these ancient texts within their historical contexts. Some of these practices might seem strange, even wrong by today's standards. But by trying to understand the why behind these rules, we can get a much clearer picture of the society that created them.
That makes sense. And speaking of navigating these rules, there's one more detail that caught my eye.
Go on.
After the purification period, the mother was supposed to bring certain offerings to the tabernacle.
Right.
A lamb for those who could afford it. But, and this is the interesting part, there was a more affordable option of 2 birds for those who couldn't afford a lamb.
Yeah, that's a detail that often gets overlooked.
It really stood out to me.
It says a lot about the intent behind these rituals, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't about excluding those who had less. It was about making sure that everyone, regardless of their means, could fulfill their obligations. They could reintegrate into the community after this huge life event.
It's like a whole different layer of compassion and understanding to what might seem at first glance like a very rigid set of rules.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, that's really what I hope we can take away from this deep dive into Leviticus chapters 10 through 12.
Like that.
These chapters might seem like just a bunch of random regulations, but when we really look at them, they offer this incredible window into a society grappling with these really big universal questions.
Like what?
What does it mean to be holy? How do we create order in a world that often feels so chaotic? And how do we connect with the divine in a way that includes everyone in our community?
Those are some big questions.
You really are.
Well, from priestly mishaps to dietary laws and now postpartum rituals, it's clear that this ancient text still has a lot to teach us. It can challenge how we see things and spark our curiosity about the past. Who knows? Maybe it can even help us think about how we approach these same questions in our own lives today, even though our world is vastly different from ancient Israel. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep exploring.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.